The Syrian government says the massacre of more than 100 people in the Syrian town of Houla was the work of armed terrorist gangs. This as the US Secretary of State admits military planning for action inside Syria is already going ahead. Moscow has vowed to block any moves for outside interference at the UN. RT's Marina Portnaya reports from New York.
Ms. Clinton, during a visit to Denmark, she was speaking about the situation in Syria, saying there is an increased need for more international action in the country. Ms. Clinton also said that Russia's policy on Syria, a policy where Russia does not support military intervention or sanctions on Syria, Ms. Clinton said that is going to contribute to a civil war in Syria. The U.S. Secretary of State said any absence of UN action in Syria, mainly due to Russia's opposition, makes it harder to respond to the crisis the way the international community did in Libya. Now, these comments are clearly coming in light of last week's massacre in Houla. U.S. officials are making their words much stronger. Just on Wednesday, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Susan Rice, said that if Kofi Annan's six-point peace plan fails, and if the Security Council does not agree on international sanctions on Syria, then countries would have to consider taking independent action without the authority of the Security Council. What that action would be is not clear, because the U.S. and European countries have already imposed their own independent sanctions on Syria. So those words led many to speculate that the U.S. and its allies are possibly considering military action. According to the commander of the Free Syrian Army, he has called on Joint Special Envoy Kofi Annan to publicly say that his six-point peace plan, that's about 7 weeks old, has failed, and that would allow rebels to resume their military attacks against President Bashar al-Assad and his supporters. Nobody from the United Nations has come out and blatantly said that the peace plan has failed. Clearly, there's been a violation of the ceasefire on both sides, the opposition and the government. Also, as all these discussions are taking place, the Syrian government has, of course, publicly said that they have the results of their investigation into last week's massacre in Houla has found that armed rebels are responsible, they say, for the deaths of more than 100 people there. And according to their investigation, they believe it is because armed rebels are trying to start a civil war in the country. The UN is also continuing their own independent investigation into what happened in Houla, and those results will be known in the next couple of days.
Marina Portnaya there, and activist Sarah Flounders told me a little earlier from Washington that the US was never interested in a diplomatic solution in Syria.
Well, it's important to know that it's the U.S. and NATO who are creating a civil war in Syria in terms of arming commando, mercenaries, thugs, flooding the country with weapons, doing everything that they can to destabilize Syria. And the latest massacre in Houla is just one more example, because it's this exact scenario that the U.S. has used to justify, quote, humanitarian intervention in the past. And after they create total destabilization, send in all sorts of mercenaries and armed groups, then they claim that they're going in order to save the situation. It's absolute hypocrisy and fraud, and they've done it with UN Security Council support, and they've done it without UN Security Council support. And we've seen this in the past, and it's clear that the US is not interested in a diplomatic solution. They are in every way trying to move toward military intervention, which means massive destruction of the entire country. But they're already responsible for great destruction.
Sarah Flounders there talking to me from New York.